picture this. It's late 1971.
Okay, setting the scene.
Right. And you are sitting in the executive boardroom of McGraw-Hill.
Oh, wow. The big leagues.
Exactly. A massive New York publishing house. And the place is absolutely buzzing with anticipation. Because they are preparing to release what they genuinely believe, I mean, what everyone believes will be the book of the decade.
Right. The Howard Hughes autobiography.
Yes. The authorized tell-all autobiography of the world's most eccentric, most secretive billionaire, Howard Hughes. I mean, the publishers are thrilled. The public is just starving for it. There's just one massive, spectacular problem.
Howard Hughes has absolutely no idea this book even exists.
Right, zero clue. And he does know it exists because the author, the guy who supposedly sat down and collaborated with him for months, has fabricated every single word of it.
It is just such an unbelievable scheme.
It really is. So today we are taking a deep dive into the life of that author, Clifford Irving, the man who nearly pulled off like the most audacious literary hoax in modern history.
Yeah, our mission today is really to take you on this chronological journey through his grand illusion.
Exactly. We've pulled together a massive stack of sources for this deep dive. We've got historical archives, biographical accounts, financial records from the 1970s, and all these retrospective analyses of the publishing industry.
And we're going to trace his transformation, right? From a really promising novelist to a convicted fraudster. And we'll figure out how his gamble kind of permanently blurred the lines between fact and fiction.
Yeah, because it's a remarkable story, but not just because of the crime itself.
No, not at all. It's really a study in the sheer power of a compelling narrative. Like, it exposes the mechanics of human gullibility.
Oh, totally.
It shows us how easily these incredibly smart, highly educated professionals can be deceived when, they're handed a story they just desperately want to believe.
I want to look at the psychology of that, because to pull off the ultimate fake story, you first have to master the art of storytelling itself.
Right. You do. And Clifford Irving wasn't just some random grifter off the street who decided to run a con.
Right. He had a serious intellectual pedigree.
Exactly. He was born in New York City in 1930 into a very creative household. His father was actually a successful cartoonist who drew covers for magazines, had a syndicated comic strip.
So if you think about it, he literally grew up around the business of creating alternate realities on paper.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And that background set him on this very traditional, highly respectable path for an aspiring mid-century American intellectual.
Yeah.
He goes to a selective arts high school in Manhattan, then on to Cornell University.
Oh, wow. Cornell.
Yeah, where he graduated with honors in English.
So he has the classic unimpeachable writer's pedigree.
It gave him a veneer of total legitimacy. I mean, he even started out working as a copy boy at the New York Times.
You can't get more legitimate than that.
Right. And by 1956, he publishes his first novel, a book called On a Darkling Plain.
Okay, so he's a published author.
Yeah, he wrote his second novel while traveling through Europe, and then a third one, a Western saga called The Valley, which was actually published by McGraw-Hill.
Oh, wait. By McGraw-Hill.
Yes. And you need to keep that detail in mind, because that pre-existing relationship with McGraw-Hill becomes the crucial wedge he uses later for his grand deception.
Wow. Okay, so he's this legitimate published author, but then his life just takes a hard left turn.
Yeah, very hard left.
He moves to the Spanish island of Ibiza. And back then, Ibiza was this wild haven for expats, bohemians, basically people trying to escape the rigid structures of the 1950s and 60s.
Yeah, right. It was very counterculture.
Exactly. And there he strikes up a friendship with a Hungarian painter named Elmyr de Hory.
Oh, yes. Elmyr de Hory.
And de Hory isn't just like painting sunsets on the beach. He is one of the most prolific art forgers in history.
Yes, he is.
He's painting fake Picassos and Matisses and successfully passing them off as real to major galleries all over the world. And de Hory actually asks Irving to write his biography.
Which is just incredible.
Right. It gets published in 1969 under the title Fake. It even caught the eye of the legendary director Orson Welles.
Oh, right, for his documentary essay film, F for Fake.
Exactly. Welles featured both Irving and the forger in that film. But looking at this, I feel like Irving's time with de Hory was basically like attending forgery grad school.
That is exactly what it was. The time he spent writing that book triggered a profound psychological shift in Irving.
Because he's just soaking it all in.
Yeah, he spends all these hours sitting with a master con artist, analyzing the exact mechanics of how de Hory fooled the snootiest, most rigorous art critics in the world.
Right.
And the core lesson he absorbs is that experts are incredibly vulnerable to their own assumptions.
I'm trying to wrap my head around what he actually learned there, though.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just about practicing brushstrokes, right?
Oh, not at all.
De Hory taught him that you don't really forge the painting. You forge the provenance.
Yes, you forge the story around the painting.
Right. Irving realized that if you create a narrative that flatters the ego of the experts, they will literally authenticate a fake for you.
That is the exact mechanism. De Hory showed him that the art establishment was fundamentally insecure and, honestly, driven by greed.
Yeah, I mean, if a gallery owner wanted to discover a lost Matisse because it would make them rich and famous, their critical thinking just shuts down.
Exactly. Irving saw that and realized the book publishing industry functioned on the exact same psychological vulnerabilities.
Wow. Which means he just needed the right target.
Just one perfect target.
Right, someone whose story the publishers would drool over, but who couldn't fight back. He realized that if top art critics could be blinded by their own desires, book executives would be no different. He just needed a subject too isolated to intervene.
Which brings us to the most isolated man on Earth at that time.
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes. And to understand why this target was so perfect, you really have to understand the intense cultural obsession with Hughes in 1970.
He was a massive figure.
Huge. He was one of the richest, most famous, and most powerful men on the planet. But by the late 1950s, he had become a complete clinical recluse.
Right. Just totally vanished.
He vanished from public view. He lived in these darkened hotel penthouses. He only communicated through a very tight inner circle of aides.
So nobody really knew what was going on with him.
Nobody. The mystery surrounding him was immense, and the media was desperate. I mean, desperate for any scrap of information.
Well, nature abhors a vacuum,
Right.
right? And so does a 24-hour news cycle.
Absolutely.
So while living in Spain, Irving and his friend, a children's book author named Richard Susskind, realized that this extreme reclusiveness is actually the perfect loophole.
The recluse loophole.
Exactly. They hypothesized that Hughes is so deeply withdrawn from society, so notoriously terrified of public exposure, that he would never step forward to publicly denounce a fake book.
It's a wild theory, but
Right. They calculated that he would never file a libel lawsuit because doing so would require him to, physically appear in a courtroom, sit for a deposition, and break his isolation.
it was an astonishing high-stakes gamble based entirely on a psychological profile of a man they had never even met.
Never even met him.
They were betting their careers and their freedom on the assumption that a billionaire would rather let someone steal his life story than face a camera.
I have to stop you there, though, because the sheer analog audacity of this crime is staggering to me.
Oh, it really is.
Imagine you are Irving in 1970. You don't have deepfakes. You don't have the internet. You don't have hacking tools to infiltrate a server. How do you even begin to forge an entire life out of thin air?
You do it through meticulous analog craftsmanship and just brutal archival labor.
What do you mean?
Well, Susskind took on the role of the researcher. He spent months digging through physical news repositories, reading every old clipping and court document about Hughes he could find.
Ah, so building a factual foundation.
Right. They had to build an airtight factual framework of Hughes's life so that the lies they wove between the facts would sound completely plausible to the fact-checkers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Irving is basically running an arts and crafts forgery ring in Ibiza.
Pretty much.
Because he knows the publishers will want proof of Hughes's consent, right? So he gets his artist friends to help him learn how to forge Howard Hughes's handwriting.
Right, which is no small feat.
And they didn't have a trove of secret, stolen documents to practice with. They literally just imitated authentic letters from Hughes that they had seen printed in a random issue of Newsweek magazine.
A magazine on a newsstand. But they didn't just trace them. Irving practiced the handwriting until he had the muscle memory down.
Oh, wow. The muscle memory.
Yeah, because handwriting experts don't just look at the shape of the letters. They look for hesitation marks, the physical pressure of the pen on the paper, the fluid rhythm of the strokes.
So he had to write it naturally?
Exactly. Irving practiced until he could write fluidly as Hughes, mirroring the erratic, bold slant of the billionaire's actual hand.
That is insane dedication. So, armed with these forged letters, Irving approaches his old publisher, McGraw-Hill.
The ones who published his Western.
Right. And his pitch is a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. He tells the executives that Howard Hughes read his recent book, Fake.
The book about the forger.
Yes. He tells them Hughes absolutely loved it and decided that Clifford Irving was the only writer trustworthy enough to ghostwrite his autobiography.
The brilliance of that pitch is how it flatters everyone involved.
Right, it's so ego-driven.
It flatters McGraw-Hill, making them feel like they've been chosen by the ultimate VIP, and it gives them a plausible reason for why Hughes would choose Irving of all people.
It's so incredibly meta.
Mm-hmm.
The billionaire wants the guy who wrote a book about a forger to write his life story, and the publishers just eat it up.
They bought it hook, line, and sinker.
So Irving flies to New York. He sits in boardrooms. He drafts contracts between McGraw-Hill himself and Howard Hughes. He literally forges Hughes's signatures on these legal documents right under the publisher's nose.
And the payday is massive.
Oh, yeah. He negotiates an advance that eventually climbs to $765,000.
To put that in economic context, in the early 1970s, $750,000 for a book advance was an astronomical sum. Adjusted for inflation, you are looking at several $1,000,000 today.
Oh, wait. This is where I get totally lost in the mechanics of the crime.
Okay, what part?
The money. McGraw-Hill obviously can't make the checks out to Clifford Irving. They have to pay the subject of the book. So they write the checks to H.R. Hughes.
Right.
Irving takes these checks, and his wife at the time, Edith, flies to Switzerland. Using a fake Swiss passport she acquired, she opens a bank account under the alias Helga R. Hughes.
Helga R. Hughes, you can't make it up.
Right. She deposits the checks, the bank accepts them, and they just take the money. How on earth was banking security that lax? A woman walks into a bank with a check for hundreds of thousands of dollars made out to the most famous billionaire on earth, and they just let Helga cash it.
You really have to look at how the Swiss banking system operated in the 1970s. This was the golden era of Swiss bank secrecy. The culture of the banking sector was built entirely around absolute discretion, numbered accounts, and asking as few questions as possible.
So they just didn't care.
Essentially. Know your customer regulations. The stringent identity checks we have today, they simply did not exist in the same way. If you had a passport matching the name on the check, the bank's primary motivation was to secure the deposit, not to play detective for the American media.
That is wild. The infrastructure of secrecy actually protected the fraudster.
It really did.
But this raises a massive question about institutional blindness back in New York.
How so?
Because as word of this upcoming blockbuster book starts to leak out into the press, the actual representatives of Howard Hughes's companies start raising red flags.
Right, the real inner circle.
Hughes's aides publicly state that this book is a fraud. They express intense doubts about its authenticity. But the institutions backing Irving don't hit the brakes. Why not?
This is a textbook example of the sunk cost fallacy combined with intense confirmation bias.
Yeah.
McGraw-Hill and Life magazine, which had paid a fortune for the rights to publish excerpts, by the way, had already staked their financial resources and, more importantly, their professional reputations on this book.
So they couldn't afford for it to be fake.
Exactly. When Hughes's people objected, the publishers convinced themselves that these aides were just trying to protect their own jobs and that Hughes was secretly defying them to work with Irving.
So instead of backing down, they doubled down.
They did.
They brought in a highly respected firm of handwriting experts, Osborne Associates, to examine the letters Irving had forged. And this is the part that blows my mind. The experts authenticated them.
It is incredible.
They declare the forged Hughes letters were genuinely written by Howard Hughes. I mean, Irving even agreed to take a polygraph, a lie detector test. The results showed some minor inconsistencies, but the examiner concluded he wasn't telling any outright lies about meeting Hughes.
The failure of the handwriting experts is crucial here, though.
Yeah, how did they mess that up?
They were looking at the physical evidence, the slant and the pen pressure Irving had practiced so meticulously, but their judgment was entirely clouded by the context.
Oh, because of who handed them the letters.
Precisely. They were handed these documents by the executives of one of the most prestigious publishing houses in the world who were implicitly telling them, these are real, we just need you to confirm it.
It really reminds me of a modern cybersecurity failure. It's like a massive tech firm giving a green light to an obvious phishing email just because the sender's signature graphic looked exactly like the CEO's.
That's a perfect analogy.
The handwriting experts authenticated the font, essentially, but they completely ignored the glaring security breaches in the actual network, like the fact that Hughes' own company was screaming that it was a fake.
Right.
It shows how institutional trust, once it's freely given by an authority like McGraw-Hill, can be weaponized by a con artist to bypass security checks.
But that weaponized trust could only hold strong as long as Hughes stayed quiet.
Right, the recluse loophole.
And Irving's foolproof plan had one fatal flaw. He severely underestimated Howard Hughes' ego.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that someone else was putting words into his mouth, shaping his legacy without his control, was the one thing that could force the billionaire out of hiding.
And the unraveling of this entire scheme is just spectacular. We reach the climax on January 7, 1972. Hughes, who hasn't spoken to the press in over a decade, organizes a telephone conference.
It's a historic moment.
He gets 7 experienced journalists on the line, and the journalists' end of the conversation is actually televised. And Hughes categorically, unambiguously states that he has never even met Clifford Irving, let alone collaborated on a book with him.
It is the exact moment the House of Cards collapses.
Just instant destruction.
Initially, Irving tries to brazen it out. In a moment of sheer desperation, he actually goes on television and claims the voice on the phone is an imposter.
No, really.
Yes, but the reality is moving too fast for him to spin a new story. Hughes's lawyers immediately file a massive lawsuit against McGraw-Hill, Life magazine, and Irving himself.
And you cannot outrun a billionaire's legal team, especially when they team up with Swiss banking authorities.
No, you really can't.
The Swiss authorities start investigating that Helga R. Hughes account. Once the international spotlight is on them, the veil of secrecy drops, and it takes them almost no time to track the fake passport back to Edith Irving.
The jig was up.
The money trail is undeniable. The jig is officially up. By January 28, just 3 weeks after the phone call, the Irvings confessed to the entire hoax.
Which brings us to the fallout.
Yeah.
What happens to a writer when their greatest creative success, the most compelling, widely anticipated story they've ever spun, is exposed as a massive criminal fraud?
Well, you go to federal prison.
You do.
Irving and Susskind pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit mail fraud. Irving voluntarily returned the advance money to his publishers, and he was sentenced to serve 17 months in federal prison.
And Edith didn't escape the fallout either.
No, she served prison sentences in both the United States and Switzerland for her role in the banking fraud.
The prison sentence was a harsh reality check. But looking at his biography, it didn't fundamentally alter Irving's chaotic, highly unconventional lifestyle.
Not at all.
To really understand the man, you have to look beyond the crime to the colorful backdrop of his personal life. Throughout his life, Irving was married 6 different times.
6 times.
And he lived a deeply nomadic existence across multiple continents.
I think that nomadic lifestyle completely tracks with his psychology, though.
How so?
Well, he lived in Ibiza, he spent a year traveling the world, he lived on a houseboat in Kashmir, and he spent over a decade living in a mountain town in Mexico. He was a man who constantly needed to reinvent his surroundings, just like he reinvented facts on paper. He couldn't stand a static reality.
That need for reinvention never faded. And of course, a story this wild was destined for Hollywood.
Yeah, absolutely.
In 1981, Irving wrote a book called The Hoax, detailing his own account of the scandal. Decades later, it gets turned into a major motion picture. The 2006 film stars Richard Gere playing Clifford Irving.
Which is awesome casting, by the way.
It is. But this introduces a layer of irony that is almost hard to believe.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
Yeah.
Here is where it gets really interesting and honestly hilarious.
Right. The master fabulous, the guy who literally invented a billionaire's life out of thin air, gets genuinely furious at Hollywood for taking creative liberties with his story.
I find this to be a masterpiece of cognitive dissonance.
It really is.
Irving publicly denounced the movie adaptation. He called it an inaccurate distortion, a hoax about a hoax.
The irony is just thick.
He was outraged that the filmmakers had added events that never actually happened, to the point where he demanded his credit as a technical advisor be removed from the film.
He couldn't handle it.
He is furious that someone added fake events to his story, which is entirely about him adding fake events to someone else's story.
It reveals a lot about his ego, I think. He wanted total control over the narrative, even the narrative of his own deception.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But despite his anger at Hollywood, he never stopped hustling. In his later years, as the publishing industry underwent a massive digital transformation, Irving pivoted right along with it.
The ultimate authorpreneur.
Exactly. He embraced the digital age, self-publishing his back catalog. He formatted 12 of his books, including his prison journals, and put them up for sale on Kindle and Nook.
And most boldly of all, he even sold the text of the fake Howard Hughes autobiography itself. He monetized the very fraud that had sent him to prison.
He died in Sarasota, Florida in 2017 at the age of 87. But the way history has categorized him is fascinating, especially for a man who tried so hard to rewrite history on his own terms.
Let's look at his archival legacy, because this is where all these threads really tie together. In 2014, a few years before his death, the Briscoe Center for American History at the University of Texas acquired all of Clifford Irving's literary and personal papers.
Right.
It is a massive archive. It fills 20 boxes and spans over 50 years of his life.
And the contents of that archive are incredibly revealing.
What's in it?
You have his real, genuine correspondence with absolute literary giants like Graham Greene and Robert Graves.
Wow.
And it is sitting right next to the forged drafts of the fake Hughes manuscript, his prison diaries, and his legal bankruptcy documents.
Looking at this archive, I mean, it's wild to me that a confessed fraudster is treated with the same archival respect as a sitting president or a Nobel laureate.
It seems strange at first.
But the more we've discussed this, the more it makes sense. Preserving his papers isn't an endorsement of his crimes. It's an acknowledgement that his hoax was a massive stress test for our culture.
Exactly.
A well-told lie, especially one that successfully fools the establishment, is an incredibly valuable historical artifact. It maps out exactly where our blind spots are.
It is a map of our vulnerabilities. The archive proves that history is not just a record of the truth. It is also a record of what we were willing to believe. McGraw-Hill wanted the scoop of the century, and Irving handed it to them on a silver platter, wrapped in a forged signature. He proved that if you tell a story with enough confidence and pad it with enough plausible archival research, people will gladly suspend their critical thinking.
It really is an incredible story.
Yeah.
We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary, unbelievable, and entirely factual life of Clifford Irving.
Thanks for listening.
But before we go, we want to leave you with a thought experiment to mull over. We've spent this time dissecting the recluse loophole, this idea that Irving exploited the absolute silence of a pre-internet billionaire to pull off an analog con using typewriters and physical research.
Which forces us to look at our modern era.
Right.
Imagine if Clifford Irving were a young, hungry writer today, armed with the tools currently available. We have AI-generated text that can perfectly mimic any author's voice and syntax.
That's everywhere now.
We have deepfake audio that can replicate a billionaire's speech patterns flawlessly. We have synthetic video that is nearly indistinguishable from reality. Could a modern Irving have successfully pulled off an even grander illusion?
Or is the exact opposite true? Does the massive, unavoidable digital footprint we all leave behind today mean the recluse loophole is forever closed?
It's a great question.
Could a modern Howard Hughes ever truly disappear enough to let a modern Clifford Irving take over his narrative? Imagine you are in a modern publishing house today, looking at an AI-generated manuscript and a deepfake video. You have to ask yourself, is this the real deal, or just another masterpiece of fiction masquerading as the truth?